Well, President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet is starting, just kind of, sort of, to actually take shape, and it is shaping up to be controversial, to say the least. We're going to take a look at some of the top contenders, whether it be for Secretary of State, even Defense Secretary, and point out why many people are more than a little concerned. Then, Trump's kids, they'll continue to run the family business. This much we knew after their dad will be sworn in. But the question is, what about potential conflicts of interest and also distractions for the commander-in-chief? And a whole lot of finger-pointing is going on and pointed criticism of the way that Hillary Clinton ran her campaign and lost. But Clinton herself, she's laying a lot of the blame on the FBI Director James Comey, and she is not alone. We will both discuss and debate. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday night. Well, President-elect Donald Trump, he is starting to assemble a team, albeit with a lot of dissension in the ranks. Things are not going smoothly. The transition meetings are being described as, among other things, quote, a knife fight. Another one called it buffoonery. And when incoming Chief of Staff Reince Priebus and incoming Advisor Steve Bannon do not see eye to eye, it is only complicating matters. Add on top of that, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, he's also vying for power with those two power players. Plus, we do know this much at least. The Governor Christie, who was tasked to run the transition team, he's on the outs, and so is former campaign head Corey Lewandowski. But it's looking like Rudy Giuliani and John Bolton, they're both, and very curiously, publicly vying for this. They're on the inside track for Secretary of State. Rudy, he's all but cocky about it. Here he is at a Wall Street Journal event just last night.
The Wall Street Journal reported early this afternoon that the choice for Secretary of State in the Trump administration is down to Rudolph Giuliani and John Bolton. We don't have John Bolton here tonight, so I'm going to ask you some questions about...
John would be a very good choice.
Is there anybody better?
Maybe me, I don't know.
Rudy Giuliani has no diplomatic experience. I could say that clip proved it, but he also has no foreign policy diplomatic experience, and he's not exactly known for playing well with others. Then again, there is John Bolton. If you forget the name here, think back a few years. The former ambassador to the UN under George W. Bush, he's not free of controversy himself. Again, this is to be the Secretary of State that he's vying for. He once said if the UN building lost 10 stories, it wouldn't make a bit of difference. And there is some more background in him, as reported by Slate today. Bolton not only opposes the nuclear agreement with Iran, but he is consistently advocating war to stop Iran's nuclear program. In stark contrast to the president-elect, he has argued in favor of regime change in Syria. He was a prominent advocate of the Iraq war, and he continues to this day to defend the invasion of that country. We got a lot to get to tonight, so let's get to that first topic. Dominic Artis, a political journalist and author. Nan Hayworth, former Republican congresswoman from New York. All right, guys, let's first start off with how the transition's going. And we're a week into it, but we're already getting word there will be no more announcements for the rest of the week because of the schisms that are involved there. Basically, Pence had to come in to try and establish some order. Do you think that's because not even Trump himself thought they were going to win on Tuesday? Or do you think he surrounded himself with so many people outside of Washington who have no experience in government that this thing has turned into a food fight because there's really no adults in the room?
There are plenty of adults in the room, Richard. I wouldn't call it a food fight or anything of the sort. The fact of the matter is that, I mean, you did hit on a point. Mr. Trump has a long career, but not in government. And you do need, as Dominic and I both know, you do need to have some expertise in steering the gigantic ship of state.
Okay, but here's one thing.
Apparently, and Mike Pence is great for that.
Okay, but here's the point. Chris Christie was appointed head of the transition team by Trump himself. By all accounts, and Dom, we've talked about this in the program, Mr. Kushner's dad was sent away to the big house by one Chris Christie, who was a former federal prosecutor at the time. So they wait until after the election, Kushner, to engineer a coup to not only throw, but this is multiply sourced. He's the one who led for Christie to not only be demoted, but also Mike Rogers, who you served with.
I like Mike Rogers.
Oh,
I think he's a great
by
talent.
all accounts, former FBI agent, former military man. He was served on the intelligence committees with distinction. He got bipartisan hosannas for great work done. He resigned today and stepped away because apparently he was seen as a Christie guy, and secondarily, he ran an independent, you were there, but he ran an independent investigation with the intelligence community and found that Hillary Clinton had no role in Benghazi, and because of that, that was a second strike against him, and he got pushed out. Mike Rogers is the kind of person you want right now, and for him to get shown the door, it shows not only is there dysfunction, but there's pettiness going on.
You know, with any team that's forming, Richard, and you know, you were in a team here. You know, there's a lot.
But you don't bite your nose to spite your face right now, and that's what's going on.
But don't forget, they are doing the kinds of things that lots of organizations do ordinarily with much less scrutiny. So and look, I've been part of organizations where there are individuals, all of whom have laudable qualities, but they sort themselves out.
Okay,
it's
but
sort of
here's
like,
the
you know,
problem,
I would
though.
fit in here, I might not fit in
I
here,
got
but
you.
it doesn't
But here's the
take
problem.
away
At
from
this
the
point,
virtue of
and I
either.
looked at this right before the show, where we were for both the Obama transition, with the George W. Bush transition. They got less than 60 days, Trump does. And he's got to appoint 4,000 jobs here. Now, maybe you don't get them all done, but you have to get the key ones. And also, this is usually easy, Dominic, when you put forward your team, right? This usually engenders goodwill. They sent out a press release. Now, people in Washington, no one's ever heard. Usually the president-elect and the vice president-elect will stand shoulder to shoulder with the chief of staff or whatever, Bannon, we'll talk about him later on in the program, whatever his title is going to be. They sent out a press release. And now for the last 24 hours, rightfully, and you'll see it in a minute as to why, people are saying, what the heck's going on? Not so much about Priebus, but about Bannon. They didn't even show up with them. It's like this is so 101, some of the stuff that they're doing that's against their own self-interests. You wonder how they're going to close the gap. They're not going to do anything for the rest of the week. This is all going to be next week. We understand there's going to be state and defense, hopefully. But you got people like Rudy lobbying on TV for the job. You've got tonight, you've got, what's her name? The conservative talk show host, Laura Ingraham, going on Fox talking about why she should be the press secretary. You never see that. It's always people proffering them up for the jobs, but you have this because there's a vacuum of leadership right now.
Well, the point that I made last night, I will say again, unconventional ways for an unconventional candidate.
But it doesn't help. It doesn't work this way.
As defined by who?
As
defined by who?
Well, let's
It's a
do it
great
this
way
way.
of putting it down.
It's
I
okay.
mean, it's
no,
as simple as
defined by
that.
phone, but let's do it. Donald Trump learned one thing, and for good or for ill, he controlled the news spin without spending money, really, and without an apparatus throughout the presidential, certainly throughout the primary campaign, and for a good chunk of the general. Not always good headlines, but he always got a headline. And it was on his terms because he would, whatever. Maybe not the, how that certain tape that came out, right, but okay. But be that as it may. Right now, he's still tweeting stuff where he's still fighting about, the popular vote and everything else. When nobody has said he shouldn't be the president right now, they're pointing out what could be 1.5 million or more vote difference that he lost the popular vote, but it's still getting under his skin. They still let him have a Twitter account. They're doing press releases announcing, in some cases, some very unpopular people. There is a complete Game of Thrones going on as to who's going to pick who's in the cabinet, let alone if they'll be confirmed. It just seems that they're not ready for prime time right now, and that's not in his best interest. So, when you say defined by whom, defined by anybody, this isn't working for.
Well, I think it doesn't hurt him at all with his base at all.
Here's the problem, though, Dom. You're right, but you know darn well, and you navigated this in terms of the Tea Party and then the rank and file Democrats. He's going to make some appointments potentially that people are going to say time out here. The Breitbart folks, you promised us this. They're mentioning names like Kelly Ayotte, who distanced herself from him throughout the campaign. They mentioned Hank Paulson, right, who said, I could never support Trump, and he voted for Hillary. If they pick names like that, and I don't know that they will, but they're already being rumored out there, I'm not saying they're not quality public
Doesn't that
servants,
prove
but that's
that-
going to drive his base crazy because he promised, unlike any other candidate, that he would do things differently and he would not be beholden to anybody in Washington, and then he'd be just another one if he goes that road.
I think as I have heard, not from the inside, mind you, but just from what's been made publicly available, that Mr. Bannon is being considered for basically chief political strategist, I'm pretty sure, within the team. And I think that is a smart way to assure people who want to hear that outsider voice, if you will, that it's going to be that voice will have a seat at the table. I don't personally, I don't see anything wrong with reaching out to people who have had experience in government, including people who are Democrats who have certain talents to offer.
There were Republicans who were part of the Obama administration.
Eva Moskowitz has been mentioned as a possible candidate for Secretary of Education.
But let's look at
Wouldn't that
the
be great?
two
She's
names.
a Democrat from
Let's
New
look
York.
at the two names we're talking about. Donald Trump made it a point that he was the only one, even though he didn't. He said that he was opposed to Iraq from the get-go, okay? Look at the names he's talking about. I'll let him get to your good friend Rudy, so you can talk about Rudy in a second. But Bolton not only was all for and still is saying Iraq was the greatest thing ever. Meanwhile, the president-elect said it was a disaster, to use his words. Bolton also said we should go to war with Iran. Bomb Iran and go to war with Iran as if Iraq wasn't enough. And he'd lop off 10 floors of the UN. And you're going to have him be your voice as Secretary of State. But Dominic, let's go to Rudy Giuliani. One, he has zero diplomatic experience. Two, he's got conflicts of interest, whether it be Citgo or the work that he's done with Qatar and the rest. And show me exactly the constituency that is saying he's the guy, we love Rudy, as the last two presidential elections have proven. It seems the only qualification is he was the only one who stood by Donald Trump here when the sex tape and everything else came out.
There you go. That's the bottom line.
Well, Christie was loyal to him too.
No.
Christie got shown the curve.
No, Christie had to go. But I don't think the Trump folks should have acted on Christie before the election. Why would you burn that bridge when Christie's people hadn't been convicted yet? So
By the way, there's no pun intended with burning the bridge.
exactly.
Wow! Look at that! Didn't even know it.
Yeah.
But his people hadn't been convicted yet. They were hoping that there would not be
Give a briefing
convictions.
to the American public that doesn't know the Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, Rudy Giuliani.
And especially the last 12 months of it.
Here's the best way I can put this. Bull in a china shop. If you're considering him for Secretary of State, he does not have the diplomatic skills. It's his way or no way. Go ahead, Congresswoman.
Dominic, no, understood. I'm not disputing what you're saying. And Mayor Giuliani is for reasons that are well known. He is a forceful, forthright kind of guy.
That's
and in
a
fact,
nice way of cleaning
well,
it up.
yeah,
I like that.
By the way,
That's
it's
good.
yeah.
Great judge of character,
Thank you,
Bernie
Dominic.
Carrick over there as his number one.
but you know what?
right-hand
But
guy.
I lived in New York. I was in training, in medical training, when the switch occurred to Mayor Giuliani, and it was a remarkable difference.
But the mayor of
he
America
really
that happened
did.
after 9/11, and I think he earned that title.
Yeah.
What he has done since that last year and destroying and it's not my opinion alone here, destroying the reputation that he earned in the aftermath of that terrible day. To me, it's puzzling. But anyway, we shall see.
But we
All
don't
right.
even know exactly who's going to.
I will tell you what we do know. We do know some of the things as it relates to Mr. Steve Bannon. And it is not just me who's going to be telling you about some questions. I got a lot of notable Republicans who are saying, really? Really? This is going to be the closest voice here to Donald Trump in the next White House? He does not stand for us. We're going to talk about him and more right after this.